a Nirvana cover by Tori Amos. And prior to that, like I said, that was That Smell by Leonard Skinner. So just sitting here listening to the music and just reflecting on all my thoughts about the sense of smell and the olfactory system. So I thought I would share a little personal experience is how I want to say that. Because essentially we are smelling with our entire body if you think about it. Nearly 700 olfactory receptors. That's more genetic receptors in one system than any other genetic receptor in the body. I mean, when you talk about dopamine receptors, you're talking about potentially 4 or 5 different types of receptors. We have almost 700 different olfactory receptors. This is the reason why the investigation is so extensive and why it continues to go on, because these are things that they're only currently discovering, which I think is important to remember when we talk about the conventional model around medicine. There are no absolute answers because we are an organic. Life is organic. Human being it's an organism. It's an organic organism, as are plants. So that means it's ever changing. Life moves forward. And so with all of these types of receptors that we have, and they are activated by lipophilic chemicals, such as plant constituents and or man-made chemicals. This is how they are making our medications. A lot of them are lipophilic. They affect these G protein coupled receptors. And the significance to this is, well, first and foremost, our sense of smell was something that our ancestors used for survival. That's the reason what prompted a lot of this selection of music I have today. But if you actually think about some of the things that they're talking about, smelling like teen spirit and the smell of desire. And when we talk about being able to smell, people, each one of us has our own unique aroma. And these olfactory receptors are responsive to odorant type compounds. Although these odors may not be detectable, they're not anything that, in the sense that they're so, the concentration is so intense, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot of the chemical at one time. So they basically go undetected by the nose, although they are affecting the entire system. Throughout my life, I have been extraordinarily sensitive, what I was labeling as sensitive to other people. I could pick up on their energy, right? And we have this thing these days, and I'm not saying that there's not some validity to this, so please don't hear that. As far as being an empath and being able to sense other people. As I mentioned a little while ago, and I've said it in prior shows, we are basically just plants with complicated emotions, because the catecholamines that are responsible for producing dopamine and serotonin and epinephrine and norepinephrine, these which are considered both neurotransmitters and hormones, those catecholamines actually come from a phenolic compound called catechol. Catechol is produced by both humans as well as plants. So there's no mistaking that we're not that much different than a plant. And the reason I say that is because it really connects us to the way nature operates. And plants are very sensitive to one another. They're sensitive to the potential threat of insects, parasites. And so they begin to send off signaling molecules. These signaling molecules are these lipophilic chemicals that I mentioned. And catechols are that type of chemical. They are an odorant chemical that have been discovered to affect a number of olfactory receptors, and they are produced under times of stress. Doesn't mean it has to be mental and emotional distress, even when a plant is distressed. Again, if there's the threat of an infection, or disease, or a potentially harmful insect or animal, they're stressed. The stress emits these catechols, these signaling molecules, which in turn let other plants know to protect themselves. So the sense of smell is about survival. It is something that we have existed on long before we ever had words or we had the ability to send text messages or alerts. We had to depend on our senses to recognize when something was approaching us and potentially threatening our lives. And the point that I'm getting at here is, although there may be the ability to sense somebody's energy based off of this scientific information, there is also some of this energy is being transmitted via these chemicals. And if plants are doing this and emitting these types of chemicals, and humans are producing these, because we do, this is how we get our neurotransmitters, we're also emitting these. So this is where pheromones come in, right? You know, the smell of attraction, the smell of desire. But we're also releasing these others, and it's a stress. It's just in response to stress. And so this is why I mentioned the smell of deception. Although we cannot detect it as like, oh, that body just doesn't smell good. And maybe you can. You might have a really, really super sensitive sense of smell. And other times you don't have that super sensitive sense of smell. You just might actually sense something, feel something with your body. And like I started to say, historically, I've been known to be very sensitive to people and kind of all of a sudden determine whether or not I want to approach somebody or if I want to stay away from somebody. I've been accused of not liking people without even talking to them. It's not that I don't like them. It's that I can pick up on them. I can, whatever they're putting off, whatever they're emitting, I can pick up on it, and my body doesn't like it. I can't say that it's not I can't say that it's my nose, but the rest of my body doesn't like it. And it never made sense to me until I finally understood or learned that we have these olfactory receptors in our body that are detecting these aromatics. Again, they do not have to be detectable with your nose in order for the body to be responding to that. This is an exceptional thing to know when we're talking about autism, because autism and schizophrenia and other highly sensitive people, they're reacting to their environment, and we're labeling them as something's wrong with them when in fact there's nothing wrong with them. They're actually highly responsive. And the stress of the environment, maybe somebody is putting off a bad vibe, okay? You could call it a bad vibe, but that bad vibe, the reason, there's something out of line in them. They're out of integrity with themselves somehow. And there's a level, and it could very well be just that they've had a really bad day and their body is, they're producing all of these different chemicals in response to stress. And therefore you are, or somebody else that is picking up on that stress because of the chemicals. And it's affecting and this is the reason if you go into a crowd of angry people, a couple of angry people, but if we're not aware that we are actually picking up on other people's anger, stress, right? We are actually, and then we're taking it in, and then it's reacting. It's causing our system to become stressed, because here's the deal. The stress response happens for whatever reason, whether our life is being threatened or we are mentally and emotionally distressed. The thing some of the significant changes that are occurring is the heart rate goes up. Did I mention that olfactory receptors are in the heart? Yes. And they're responsive to these catecholamines. So you have these catecholamines that are signaling the increase in the stress rate, in the heart rate. Our respiration quickens. Okay, so we're breathing rapidly, the heart rate goes up, and it may be, again, undetectable because we're so inundated with so much information in this world. There's so much going on around us to distract us that we may not be aware that somebody is not breathing in a relaxed way. They may not, I can't tell you how many people I've encountered that you actually have to look at them and tell them to breathe, and they'll go, well, I am breathing. And I went, no, you're actually not. Take a deep breath. Tell your body that you're okay. That's what a deep breath will do. This is the reason why so many people do breath work. But there's olfactory receptors in the lung tissue as well. So these systems are activated as a result of these catecholamines. And so this is another reason why. So if you're, again, in a group of heightened anxiety, anger, frustration. And all of a sudden, you may have walked into the crowd and you may have been just fine. Then all of a sudden you find yourself getting amped up. And the next thing you know is you've got a crowd. You've got this collective animosity, this anger, this collective stress. It's because everybody is feeling one another and they're not aware of it. And so this is where it becomes to be very well, to start taking an assessment of how we feel before we enter into a situation, and understanding that you may have breathed something, you may be picking up on somebody else's. There's almost 8 billion people on this planet. There's all kinds of stress hormones being emitted everywhere. And learning how to rein that in and really begin to take steps that help signal our personal wiring, because none of us are wired the same, and begin to help understand what our system needs to help soothe it. Could be just the deep breathing, could be stepping away from the crowd. Seriously separating yourself from what doesn't feel good and beginning to distinguish where you've been to where you can begin to get a better handle on your own ability to help your body self-regulate, so that it actually has the ability to heal. All of us are really would benefit to heal from the amount of stress. If that's all we did was take that into consideration and understand that all of these chemicals that we're exposed to, it's affecting us. They're affecting us, and allowing the body to be able to clear them and begin to heal from the amount of stress, like I said. There's something I was present to. I don't know that I want to talk about it on the air or not. Right now I'm going to think about it, but I just want to say that one of the things I think is most important is to recognize, it's a big issue for me today, really, is deception. That's part of the reason why I'm including this in this. I've spent a good many years being very upset about deception. And I think if I was going to pinpoint anything, I mentioned anger, but I really think that deception is the big one, because so many people are thinking they're hiding something unknown to them, that they're actually putting off a scent. Again, although it's undetectable, they are emitting these odorant compounds that are being picked up by other people. I don't know if those of you who are listening, if you have ever been able to go, hey, I just feel like that person was lying. And it's really hard. From my angle, I don't do well to call somebody out as a liar. I don't like to say that. And I do understand why some people may want to hide things, but that causes a level, that's a whole nother level of stress, because when we aim to deceive somebody or to hide something from somebody, it's virtually impossible to hide if we realize the fact that we're actually picking up on it, because their stress levels, because once you try to hide something that you're trying to hide facts, you're trying to hide truth, so to speak, right? Truth is really the love. So you're withholding love and saying something else that will actually begin to stir up the stress response in the body, because we are about love. That's what this is about. And when we step away from love, that's when it becomes distress in the system. It registers as distress. In the body, the chemistry changes. And as that chemistry changes, people around you pick up on it. And so they may start acting oddly. And we don't know why. And again, until we begin to have conversations like this and begin to actually own the fact that we are picking up on other people's BS, their secrets, although we may not know it. That's another thing I've had really hard time with throughout my life, is when my kids used to tell me stories, and again, I'm not the one that's going to come out there with the "you're a liar" label. I get agitated. I get so upset because I can't prove that they're lying. I can only feel that they're lying. And so today, when that happens to me, I have to do a lot to dispel that energy, because I don't want to come out and I don't want to insult anybody, but at the same time, I'm taking on their lies, and so that's not taking care of myself. So I've got to find ways to release that, and so that's the next step in the healing process, because, like I said, stress, as you all know, is damaging. And so the more we take care of ourselves and create an inner peace, the more we can actually restore our systems, just and stabilize our systems in response to the things that are going on around us. And the sense of smell is a big one. On that note, I'm going to set you loose with the cranberries and wake up and smell the coffee.